Darth Plagueis the Wise was an incredibly intelligent and powerful Sith Lord who viewed the Force differently from his predecessors and thus changed everything during his reign as the Sith Master in the galaxy. Plagueis believed that in order to discover immortality, he needed to control the Medichlorians, and thus viewed the Force through a scientific lens and disregarded the views that the Jedi and other Sith held on how the Force worked. Plagueis recorded much of his research and thoughts in what would come to be the Book of Sith, a collection of texts written by multiple Sith Lords over the centuries that Emperor Palpatine kept in his possession in his personal storage facilities on Wayland. Eventually, by 24 ABY, this amalgamation of Sith knowledge was discovered by Luke Skywalker himself, who was determined to discover if the Book of Sith was a danger to both his new Jedi students and the New Republic. As Luke read the book, preparing it for inspection by the New Republic Historical Council, he left numerous annotations in the margins, giving his thoughts on the knowledge of the previous Sith Lords. Interestingly enough, when it came to the section of the book written by Plagueis that covered his scientific research, Luke was incredibly critical of Plagueis' beliefs and claims about the Force. So let's jump into the Book of Sith, which is part of the Legends continuity, and see why Luke pretty much disagreed with Darth Plagueis on everything. Plagueis' first entry is in regards to the science of creating life. He wrote, "What is the Force? The Jedi say it is created by life, but I say the Force creates life. It is a simple deduction, an obvious conclusion when supported by structured experimentation. Yet, consider this. The galaxy's leading scientific minds are largely ignorant of the Force, and the galaxy's most skilled Force users reject science. Thus, I will be the first to pursue this line of inquiry. Science seeks to understand the principle behind reaction, not merely how to replicate it. The Sith of old never asked these questions, for tradition and obedience extinguished their spark of curiosity. And these questions are much more than speculation. My science will remove everything superfluous. In this way, the true nature of the fundamental elements that the Jedi and the Sith wield so casually will be revealed." In regards to this passage left by Plagueis, Luke wrote an annotation, saying, "The element that Plagueis couldn't measure is the will of the Force. The Jedi hear this call, and I believe the Sith do too. I don't think the Force felt compelled to speak to Plagueis." The main thing that Plagueis focused on was the Medichlorians, which the Jedi taught were symbionts that allowed Force users to commune with and use the Force. Plagueis did not share their views, and instead thought of the Medichlorians as interlopers, disrupting the ability to truly perceive the Force. Plagueis considered them to be endosymbionts, and since the Medichlorians inhabited living cells, the host organism was able to draw upon this connection with them. That's actually how Plagueis was able to resurrect dead beings, at least in Legends, and even stop his physical body from aging, by learning how to control his and other beings' Medichlorians. In another annotation, Luke wrote that Plagueis' focus on Medichlorians was misguided. He said, "The Medichlorians are a natural lesson in symbiosis. When we listen to the smallest creatures, they open us to the expanse of the Force. Only a Sith Lord would seek to dismantle a relationship that benefits both parties." As Plagueis continued his writings on immortality and the philosophy of life, he wrote, "Life is a resource to be exploited. It's unique in that those who possess it find it priceless, yet in the masses it is so common that it's functionally worthless. Billions of beings come into existence every day, and billions more die. We should preserve only those who advance our goals or whose work is complementary to our own, such as Sith apprentices, but all other beings must be allowed to die. Immortality opens up a new tactic for the Sith Grand Plan. No longer do I need to prepare for the succession of the Sith Order after my death. Schemes and plans set in motion today can safely take decades or centuries to come to fruition when guided by a master whose patience is infinite." In the margins of this page, Luke wrote, "During the Battle of Mindor, I faced the reality that everything in the universe eventually perishes. No one wants to die, but this obsession with extending life is selfish. We all have our time. Nothing good comes from trying to cheat it. Finally, Plagueis recorded his thoughts on the Jedi Chosen One prophecy and the mythical beings of the realm known as Mortis. He wrote, "The beliefs of the Jedi are expressed in ritual and storytelling. They await the coming of a savior, a prophesied chosen one who will destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force. The Jedi tell tales of Mortis, where three all-powerful beings can assume strange shapes and exemplify the dark side, the light side, and the principle of balance. The Jedi believe that their chosen one will prevent such gods and demons from tearing the universe apart, that their champion will be a vessel of pure Force energy." So we come back to the Medichlorians. These organisms allow beings to live and provide a connection to the Force. If bred in sufficient quantities, midichlorians can even conceive a new life form and bestow upon it powers greater than any Jedi has ever dreamed, generating a vergence in the Force. If I induce midichlorians to create such a being, my handiwork would fit all the descriptions of their chosen one, but he would be an agent of my will. How fitting that the misguided reliance on superstition could lead to a Sith creation that is hailed by the Jedi as a savior. Below this passage, in his last annotation, Luke wrote, "Plagueis made the mistake of believing that if something isn't literally true, then it has no value. I don't know the Jedi legends well, but the balance of the Force is a subject to be studied, not dismissed." So this really is one of my favorite parts of lore. As you guys may know, I'm a huge fan of when things from the original trilogy connect to things from the prequel trilogy. I love Luke learning about Anakin's fall during Revenge of the Sith, Order 66, stuff like that. So Luke learning about Darth Plagueis is something that I was very interested in when I first read the Book of Sith. And I think it's really interesting that Luke pretty much disagrees with everything that Plagueis stood for. After reading the Darth Plagueis book by James Luceno, I think that book is a masterpiece. It's one of the best Star Wars books ever written, if not the best. But after reading it, Plagueis became my favorite Sith Lord just because of how intelligent and different and unique he was, and I think that he really was a genius. But Luke is my favorite Star Wars character of all time, just in general in terms of Star Wars. So to see him disagree with everything that Plagueis wrote is fascinating to me, but it also just makes conflict in me in terms of how I view the stories and how I see these two characters perceiving each other, or at least Luke perceiving Plagueis. So that's why I think that it's really interesting, because obviously, since Luke is my favorite, I really admire Luke, specifically in the Legends timeline, how he rebuilt the Jedi Order and all of his exploration that he did, finding Jedi artifacts and Sith artifacts, and the Book of Sith is part of Legends now, so Luke getting this book and reading about Plagueis and writing the annotations is not canon, it's part of Legends, but I really love it either way. And I think it's really cool that he essentially thought that Plagueis was basically a fool, and he thought Plagueis was wrong about everything, midichlorians, the Chosen One prophecy, his research on immortality and everything, and that makes sense, especially given what Legends Luke has gone through in terms of battling Sith spirits like Exar Kun and defeating Palpatine in Dark Empire, and when Palpatine came back in a clone body. So it makes sense why Luke would feel the way that he does about immortality, especially because his Jedi Masters maintain their consciousness within the Force as spirits, the right way, the correct way, without using the dark side, because obviously it's not really possible for Sith Lords. So I really do like this full circle idea of Luke coming back to Plagueis' research, Plagueis' ideas, because that's really what kicked off the entire Skywalker saga, and inadvertently, possibly, Anakin's creation through Plagueis' experiments. So this is like Star Wars Episode 0. Star Wars Episode 0 is what I call the Plagueis book, and this is like the Legends timeline after Return of the Jedi, coming full circle with the story that really started everything of Anakin's story and then subsequently Luke's story. So I really love Luke learning about Plagueis, and I hope that you guys find it as interesting as I do. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would appreciate it, and as always, may the Force be with you.